Chapter 16. Deacon. Deacon checked the time on the car as he neared the meetup spot. He was a little early, but that was fine with him. It would give him time to check out the area. Baytown was a good 5 hours from Fire Beach, so he'd picked a spot about halfway in between. One he thought would be busy enough to be safe, but it never hurt to check it again. As he pulled into the parking lot of the Walmarts they'd agreed to meet at, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He glanced around. The parking lot was about half full, not as much as he would have liked, but better than empty. There was a large container off to the side advertising a donation drop-off center. Across the street were 2 fast food restaurants that were bustling, and a grocery store with a half-full parking lot was visible as well. There were few places to hide, so why did he have the feeling that someone was watching him? He decided to check out the donation container. It was the only place he could think of that someone could be hiding behind. Easing the car forward, he cleared the container, but there was nothing on the other side. Maybe it was just nerves getting the better of him. As he headed back for the meetup spot, he saw his truck pull in the parking lot. He'd appreciated the use of the car, but he was glad to be getting his truck back. Eric had told him that he was sending someone he could trust, a young guy with blonde hair and a heart for fixing all the wrong in the world. Tim was his name, and he'd be wearing a blue shirt so that Deacon would know it was the right guy. The truck pulled to a stop, and the guy stepped out. When Deacon saw the blue shirt, he stepped out as well. "Deacon?" the guy asked. Deacon nodded. "That's me. What's your name?" "I'm Tim. Eric sent me." Deacon nodded again, but even though Tim was saying all the right things, something still bothered him. "Are the keys in the truck?" "Yep. Your keys in the car?" "They are." Deacon began walking toward Tim, keeping his senses alert for any sound or movement that didn't belong. Tim held out his hand as Deacon neared. "Good to meet you, man. I hope I grabbed everything you guys needed." Deacon shook Tim's hand. "Good to meet you, too. I'm sure you did great. Tell Eric thanks for me." "You bet." Tim smiled and released Deacon's hand, and that's when he heard it, the crack of a gunshot. The bullet whizzed by his right arm and grazed Tim's left, leaving a spreading trail of red on his arm. "What the?" But Tim didn't get to finish that sentence as another bullet flew past them. "Come on," Deacon said, grabbing him and throwing him into the truck. Deacon scanned the area one more time, but he couldn't tell where the bullet had come from other than behind him. "Is it bad?" he asked as he closed his door and fired up the truck. Tim grimaced but shook his head. "I'll live. Who the heck is shooting at us?" "I don't know, but we have to get out of here." A bullet hit the back window, shattering the glass and causing both of them to jump. Deacon pressed the accelerator and peeled out. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement near the donation container and realized the shooter had probably been hiding inside. He just hoped there wasn't another one in a vehicle waiting to follow them. He checked his mirror as he pulled onto the road, but there was no immediate movement. "How did he even know where we were meeting?" Tim asked, glancing behind them as well. "There's only 3 ways I can think of. Either you're working with them, Eric is, or they're monitoring the phones." Tim's face paled as he realized the implications. "It's not me, I promise." Deacon spared him a glance. The kid was young, but he seemed earnest. However, if he was telling the truth, that narrowed the possibilities down to just 2. Deacon didn't want to suspect Eric. He had lost touch with him, but he just couldn't believe the man would try to get him killed. But if it wasn't Eric, who would know to monitor his phone? "How well do you know Eric?" Deacon asked as he drove. He wasn't as familiar with this town, so he hoped he'd find what he was looking for before he got them both lost. The kid shrugged. "I've only been on the job for 6 months, so about that long. Eric was the one who took me under his wing, though, and showed me the ropes. Do you really think he could have done this?" Deacon shook his head. "No. Until recently, I hadn't spoken to him in years.
but the man I knew was a good man."
Deacon pressed his lips together as he tried to make sense of the situation.
"Did Eric call you on the phone or ask you in person to do the exchange?"
"He asked me in person in his office." Was it possible? Did they have Eric's office bugged? If whoever was behind this knew that Eric was looking into them, it would make sense.
"Do you have Eric's cell number?"
Tim nodded.
"Yeah, why? You want me to call him? Are you sure that's safe?"
"There's one way to find out. Call him on his cell, tell him to get out of his office before you say anything else, then ask him to meet us at Hodgins Park."
"A park? That's pretty open. Won't that leave us sitting ducks if it is him?"
"If I remember correctly, there's a place we can set up where we'll see anyone coming in, but have the ability to leave quickly if necessary."
It had been years since Deacon had stopped at this park, but he hoped it hadn't changed much. Tim nodded.
"Okay, I'll trust you. I don't know this area at all, but I hope this works."
"It better," Deacon said, checking his mirrors again. "I don't really have another idea."
While Tim made the call, Deacon searched for a drugstore to get some items to patch Tim up. He'd need to get medical attention later to avoid an infection, but some ointment and gauze would do for now.
"Okay, he said he was leaving now, but that still means 2 hours, right?"
"Unless he speeds."
Tim nodded.
"I just hope we didn't summon the wolf to the hen house."
Deacon sighed as he pulled into the drugstore parking lot.
"I hope so too. Be right back. Gonna run in and grab some first aid for your scratch."
Tim glanced down at his arm and grimaced again.
"Grab some Tylenol too."
Deacon hurried into the store, grabbing the items he needed off the shelf and paying at the register. Then he was back in the truck and heading toward the park. When they got there, he parked the truck so they could see every arrival before he began doctoring Tim's wound.
"Keep an eye out front and let me know if you see anything."
"You got it."
Deacon finished and sat back in the seat. As there was still no sign of Eric or anyone else, he decided to find out more about Tim.
"Did Eric tell you anything about dirty cops?"
Tim shook his head.
"No, I'm not in his inner circle, and I don't think I've been there long enough for everyone to trust me. But I've heard some rumors. Is that what this is about?"
"Maybe. The stuff you picked up for me is my friend's. She witnessed a drug deal, but evidently someone connected to the force is trying to cover it up."
Tim let out a low whistle.
"Wow, I guess this is just another reminder to keep my ears open and my head down."
"That's always a good plan," Deacon said.
The two continued to chat until an approaching car caught Deacon's eye. He nodded toward the window.
"There he is, and he looks like he's alone."
Eric's sleek orange Mustang was hard to miss, but it appeared to be alone, as did Eric when he stepped out of the car.
"You can stay inside if you want," Deacon said as he opened his door.
"Nah, I'm good."
Tim opened his door as well, and the two cautiously approached Eric. Eric's eyes widened when he saw the bandage on Tim's arm.
"What happened?"
"Someone was there waiting for us," Deacon said. "They started shooting as soon as we made the exchange. Good thing they weren't a very good shot, or neither one of us might have made it out of there alive."
"But how did they—"
Eric's words faltered as his eyes widened.
"You don't think I tipped them off, do you?"
"There aren't many other options," Deacon said,
folding his arms across his chest.
"That's why I wanted to meet. I needed to see your reaction."
"I promise you, Deacon, I'm on your side."
Deacon stared at him a little longer, but he didn't get the feeling that Eric had betrayed him. Instead, he once again felt peace. He sighed.
"I believe you, which means we're left with only one other option. Someone has either your office or your phone bugged."
Eric blinked a few times as if he couldn't believe this was a possibility, but then he began to nod.
"I should have thought about that. I should have checked my office. As soon as I began asking questions, I should have known they would start looking for ways to shut me down."
"It's not your fault, but it does mean you should be more careful."
Deacon turned to look at Tim.
"Both of you."
"We will."
Eric shook his head.
"Somehow I fear this goes even higher than we thought."
Deacon had no doubt he was right about that.
Thanks for all you've done. Any more word on the guys who chased us to the warehouse?
Eric sighed.
No, I wish I did. They're still not talking. But I have no doubt someone sent them there. I just don't know who. If she decides not to come back, would you be able to help coordinate a moving company? Of course. I don't want to know where you're staying, but I'll keep in touch if this ever goes to court. Sounds good.
Deacon turned to Tim and held out his hand.
I'll leave you in the hands of this guy, but thank you for picking up these items and risking your life.
Tim smiled and returned the shake.
All in a day's work, am I right? It shouldn't be, but until Jesus returns, yeah, I guess it is.
Deacon shook hands with Eric as well before climbing back in his truck and heading home.